Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for the second in a series of Coffee with the Candidates. The partnership welcomes attendees to use the chat box to submit questions to the moderators. I'm Eldon Callen with the Morgantown Area Partnership. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs and General Counsel. I want to tell you a little bit about the partnership. The partnership is a public-private alliance for the betterment of economic business and community development in Monongalia County and the greater Morgantown area. It is comprised of the Chamber of Commerce, Monongalia County Development Authority, Morgantown Area Economic Partnership, and the Neighborhood Revitalization Corporation, otherwise known as Sunnyside Up. The partnership takes a holistic approach to business, economic, and community development and focuses on creating strategic solutions for our growing community. As an organization combined of both public and private entities, we do not endorse candidates. However, we do focus strongly on many policies and issues that are important to our members. We have approximately 500 business members in the community, and we focus on those issues at the state, local, and federal levels that make a difference, not only to our membership, but to the entire region. We are so happy today to have with us our current Congressman, David McKinley. He's been a regular visitor to our Chamber of Commerce building and to our partnership, and we are glad that he's able to take a little bit of his time to spend with us today and meet with us. I want to also thank our co-chairs of our Government Affairs Committee for they spend a good bit of time working for the partnership on these issues, and for them to take their time out to moderate this event. I would like to introduce Libby Durr, who is affectionately known as Libby. She's the Regional External Affairs Consultant with First Energy Mon Power, for whom she has worked for 26 years. She is a liaison between the electric utility and towns in 9 northern counties, including state legislatures, county governments, and nonprofit organizations. We also have Dan Miller. He is a senior scientist with Potesta and Associates, a leading environmental engineering firm in West Virginia with offices both Morgantown and Charleston. We want to thank both of them for their efforts, dedication, and time to the partnership and for the entire community. I want to again, thank the Congressman and the moderators, and I will now turn it over to the moderators to begin the session.
Good morning, and thank you, Congressman McKinley, for joining us today. I'm just so happy to have this opportunity to speak with you and ask a couple of questions. The first thing I'm going to discuss, the first question I have is concerning COVID-19. From earlier in the year until today, COVID-19 has totally changed the world, and it has certainly impacted the lives of the citizens of West Virginia and how they go about their daily lives. So stores closed, stores reopened, nursing homes closed, they opened, they reclosed. Schools have been in session, then they went virtual, and now I believe in some cases they have a blend of instructions. And maybe the worst of all are all of the jobs that have been lost. So it has definitely changed the face of definitely West Virginia, and I know all of the United States. And we also know that researchers are working around the clock. They're trying to come up with a vaccine here. And while they're working on the vaccine, we're doing our part. We're wearing our mask, we're practicing good social distancing. So we're trying to do what we're advised to do to stay safe so we can keep ourselves safe and those around us. So my question is this: with the pre-COVID normal, which was normal before COVID, it appears to be a ways off. It doesn't look like we're going to be there again anytime soon. So I wanted to know if you had an idea how our leaders will successfully manage our current social structure, or how we interact and live together with this disease still there and still rampant. How do you see our lives changing or being affected over the next year due to COVID-19?
That's really a interesting and complex question, because people have to understand, we're not France, Spain, Italy, and other countries where a president can issue a dictum or an executive order and the whole country has to follow that. That's what happens elsewhere. In America, because of our Constitution, each state has, under the 10th Amendment, they have control over that. So what we do in West Virginia could be different than what they do in Ohio. And so one of the problems could be is that, as you know, West Virginia was the last state to be a positive case. But then, so if we can get our act together as we're doing now, we're still keeping our numbers down. That people come from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, Kentucky, they can reinfect us in West Virginia. So the whole point, I guess, is going to have to be, how do we respect each other? How do we make sure that we wear our masks? How do we make sure people are washing their hands and keeping social distancing? That's what's going to have to happen, because our goal in Washington is to get back to the 2019 the economy of 2019 as quickly as possible. Because at that time, things were booming in West Virginia and across the country. And because of this pandemic coming in from China, you're seeing now it's affecting us. It's not that what we don't have is we don't have policy failure like we had in 2008. We have a pandemic, a healthcare crisis that's swept across the country. So we want to get back to those policies that were causing so many job growths. When Mac Warner and I talked, he said there were more business startups last year in 2019 than ever in the history of West Virginia. So we've got to get back to that. And I think the thing is, how do we respect people's social distancing and masks and washing their hands and trying to just be careful about that so that our businesses can open again. But again, Jim Justice, the governor, is trying as quickly as he can to get those businesses open again, from the restaurants to other business. I hope we do that, but I just hope that people coming in from other states don't reinfect us again. So we're gonna have to just be careful. It's a long answer to your question, but I think that's where the sooner we can, and also I would say, helping out through this COVID, is how quickly can we get this last stimulus package passed? How can we do this next PPP program, the payroll protection plan, get that thing passed? It's stuck in Congress right now because quite frankly, the leadership, Nancy Pelosi, doesn't want it passed until later on this year. We have a bill, it's in committee. I've signed the discharge paper to make sure that discharge, there's a technique I'm trying to indicate that. If we get discharged to committee, it takes place, and we'll have billions of dollars back to be able to have forgivable loans again for the people, the businesses across West Virginia and across this country. So there are a lot of things that need to happen, but we need a stimulus package. But until we can get the stimulus package passed, then let's at least get this PPP program back in, because it was one of the most successful ways for people to survive the early days of this pandemic. Does that help?
Yeah, I agree with that. I know a lot of people put that stimulus money to good use. I know they did. So thank you so much for that answer. I appreciate it. Now, you know, in West Virginia, we also have still, although it's been somewhat overshadowed by COVID, we still have a drug crisis. And you know, West Virginia has been losing too many of our youth due to drugs, drug abuse. And I know that there has been work going on to help reverse this epidemic. And also a lot of money has been invested to help, to help turn this around. And a lot of people in our state know somebody who is addicted to drugs. They may know somebody who has died from drug abuse or drug overuse. And this also, you know, includes siblings and parents, people that have suffered because of someone else's drug abuse. And more families I see are opening up about their own children or their own family members' drug abuse because they're trying to share with others so they'll understand how tragic this can be. And that's a good thing. You can never share enough information about things like this. But my question is about the drug traffickers. Can you tell me if they are working on legislation to create laws with respect to the drug traffickers? Because most parents out there would like to ensure that the severity of their punishment is equal to the severity of their actions, of the drug traffickers' actions. And we're just curious if you can tell us anything about that.
Again, very good question. And it's frustrating in Washington because what's happening there in Washington has been when we were in the majority, and I can be partisan for a moment. We were in a majority. At first, we had to convince our leadership that this is a problem not just related to West Virginia, Kentucky, and some isolated states. This was a national epidemic that we were dealing with, national crisis. Once they realized, they accepted that because the statistics started to come in over the period of years. So we finally got up to back in 17 and 18, where we had 7 hearings on opioids. Seven hearings. If you get 1 hearing on your legislation, you're doing something very well. We had 7 hearings because people started recognizing this is a national problem that we have to address, all aspects of it, from the traffickers to how we treatment. What are we doing about this? How are we going to control it? How are we going to have control suspicious drugs that are being shipped into it? How are we going to prevent 2 million drugs being sent to one pharmacy, as we were finding out? So we were moving on that. But then the oddity, what happened, we lost control of the House and it went over to Nancy Pelosi. I'm going to say Nancy, but I'm not saying at all that she isn't addressing the issue. But in the last 2 years, we've had 1 hearing on drugs. So we've got some issues with this, how we're going to address that. Now, we have to understand, please, I'm still being very loud about it because West Virginia led the nation in the drug problem. And they're saying that with this COVID, I know it's serious. I know it is. But we have to, I think, get back to your question, or part of your question is, with this COVID, we're going to have almost 3 times the number of people who are going to die in West Virginia from drugs than from COVID. So we've taken our eye off the ball. We're focusing on COVID, but yet we have families struggling with this issue. We just met with a company over in Grant County that they want to expand their operation, but they can't find workers because when they test them, they're testing positive for drugs. So we have a problem with this. Now, what we've done to address it, though, is things like HIDA, the high incident drug traffic area. We're trying to focus more on that to get more counties in West Virginia. When I came into office, we only had 2 counties in West Virginia, in the 1st district. Now we have 12 that are some way or another covered by this program to be able to reduce the drug trafficking coming into it. So I think your question is spot on. We have to look at how we're going to treat the people that are bringing the drugs in, but we also have to figure out and provide the resources to be able to treat the people so that they, those that are getting this through either recreationally or because they're trying to self-medicate from some injury, we've got to be able to help them out with that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, David, thank you for coming back. I think I recall the last time we shared some coffee was at the Shoney's in Saberton. So here's to sharing coffee with you once again.
Here's to you. Here's right back at you. I thought we had a good time, but we were introducing Russ to us. Russ had just come in from North Carolina just a few weeks before. And so we had a chance now to talk to him and Eldon about his new role with the chamber. So I think look at how society has changed since that time we met last May.
Yeah, it's a different world. Another question that kind of deals with the whole state probably much of the country, but in particular, the northern part of West Virginia and Morgantown Area Partnership is focused on those sort of things for our legislatures. With the COVID issue, schools have been virtual, and it has brought to light the differences between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to being able to attend virtually and still get the videos and the various broadband delivered education. And in the western part of Mon County, Clay Battelle High School is an example. There's a lot of students there that don't have the connections with broadband. I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with the Federal Communications Commission. They've got about $20 billion for broadband. I think 760 some million are, I don't know if they're packaged for West Virginia, but we're available to receive up to 766 million. And I was wondering, how can you try to help facilitate getting that money available? Because we need it now, even though the school system is, just starting. We need it. It takes months, if not years, to get this stuff in the ground and functional. So just speak to that a little bit about how we can access the federal money.
Thank you, Dan. It goes back a little bit, maybe to what Ms. Dunham was saying. One of the things with drugs, and the same thing with broadband, we're trying to make sure Washington understands there's a difference between larger communities and rural America. So when they want to spread this money out on a per capita basis, we're not going to do well in West Virginia. On drugs, what we did there, they adopted what we call the McKinley Amendment, which meant that counties and municipalities that are hard hit with drugs are going to get a disproportionate amount of the money that when we put into this program for the drug rehabilitation and the drug abuse problem. And we've accomplished that already through SAMHSA and the HH. We're getting 7 times the amount of money that we would otherwise gotten. So it's played a role by being on the Energy and Commerce Committee and being able to work out and point out the difference, teach them the difference. Well, the same thing applies in broadband. People don't understand in New York, in LA, and San Francisco, the differences between broadband in their communities and what we have here. So we work hard, and I think we accomplished some aspects of that. We've got $100 million into a program right now into rural areas, and we're already seeing it in, one is, we just had a meeting with Harrison County, their co-op down there, that they're bringing broadband in through Parkersburg and into north central West Virginia. But I was looking on my list, Wetzel County, Tyler County, Brooke and Hancock County are now using part of this USDA Reconnect grant. It's going to make sure we provide this because it's so crucial for us to be able to have broadband, and we don't have reliable broadband here, even in Wheeling. Often when we're on these Zoom calls that we'll get into, I'll lose the signal because it's just not broad enough. Our bandwidth, we have problems with it. Just imagine it in schools. That's why this idea of having hotspots. We've had some conversations with the school superintendents, how we're going to handle that when they go. But the idea, their answer has been, well, we have hotspots in the county. I want coverage into a person's house. I don't want the digital dial up. You and I can remember when we used to have to dial up to get it. That doesn't work in this. We've got to have high speed broadband coverage to be able to take care of that. So we're working out. We've got numbers of pieces of legislation that we're trying to push through on that. But because of this election cycle and what it interferes with our ability to get some of these legislation passed. But more importantly, it comes down to teaching people that broadband in rural America is different than broadband in a big city.
Yeah, thank you. Just some of the mechanics on that. You mentioned the various counties surrounding or close to Monongalia. For the money that has been budgeted now, rather than what might be budgeted in the future, is that money administered into the state and then the governor gets to control who gets to use it county by county, or can a commissioner from a county solicit a certain amount of money for the county itself. I'm not sure how the mechanics works on that, because we're working with some of the commissioners in Mon County to try to determine how do we get our hands on this money so we can talk to the broadband companies to expand some of their cable fiber or towers or that sort of thing.
It goes into a grant. It's a grant program through the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. It's a grant. So counties can submit for those grants. And what we've been doing is writing cover letters and support and making phone calls. So It's a lot of things we do behind the scenes that's been able to accomplish this. So we're seeing, that's why we went down to Harrison County, because we had written several letters in behalf of that through USDA. And Chris Warner was very helpful, enormously helpful to having someone that understands rural America coming from Morgantown. So Chris was very helpful with that, and we're going to continue to do that, but it's on a county by county basis. I think that's probably your best way to go about that, encouraging our counties to submit money, and we will support them. Because that has to happen, but there's the money's out there. We have the money, and I think you're going to see it in another care package. You're going to see even more money put into it. Right now, we have $100 million. That's not enough. Second, this next COVID package this care package, if you want to call it care package 2 or whatever, we're going to see more money put into that if we ever can get it passed.
Yeah. Okay. So Mon County would be able to count on you for a letter of support when we go to the USDA for some of the broadband money, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Look, I didn't spend, like Eldon said on it, I've been to Mon County 333 times. We engineers, we keep track of our numbers. We know what we're doing so that we can follow the metrics. But 333 times, we understand a lot of the issues. And that's what we're trying to do, is when we come to a county, we have one of these meetings, we take back to Washington what we've heard. So that we want to be accessible to people so they can understand what the problem is. In all the 20 counties, we have these meetings, we take it back there, and we accomplish it. And I think that's what we would do here. You just tell me that you made it, follow back up again. There's so many things that have happened in Mon County by some of these meetings we've had. It's been very important for us. We're trying to rebrand politics a little bit. We're trying to do what we say we're going to do. So if you need help, you ask us, we're going to follow up with that.
Excellent. We appreciate that. And then expanding our region just a little bit further, I think the last time you were here, we may have discussed the Appalachian Underground Storage Hub for natural gas and how the federal money, I think there was certain amount that had been designated or guaranteed by the federal government so that banks would be able to loan money to start the infrastructure.
Dan, I gotta say, I lost you for about 20 seconds there. I didn't have this one again. This is the problem we're having here. So we lost you. Could you start again with that?
Yeah. Just what I'm asking for is a quick update on the Appalachian Underground Storage Hub that a couple of years ago had some federal money that was going to guarantee loans that banks could make for that infrastructure to begin. Do you have any updates on that? Because that does affect this region as well.
Yes, it affects all of us. The only update is more companies are getting interested in it. We have one operation going on over in Monroe County, Ohio, that they're already building a cavern. That's one of the permits they had to go through to be able to do this. WVU, Penn State, and I don't know whether Ohio State was. It's been a while. They did a study that indicated where those locations could be and having this underground storage. We began with Rick Perry on that, and Rick Perry said it was so important as part of national security to have a secondary ethane storage facility other than down in Texas. I think it's Mount Bellevue. 212 million barrels of ethane can be stored there. We're trying to develop something up here that will start off in a very small level, maybe 3 to 4 million barrels. Hopefully to get up, ultimately we get to 100 million barrels. If we can get that secondary hub, because the idea, again, was national security. We've seen what's happened down in the Houston area when we had the hurricanes come in. We also know that there are some bad actors. It's too accessible from the coast for people that could destroy what we have in our petrochemical complex. So the idea with Rick Perry and now Dan Brulette is to build a secondary facility. And we think it's ideal. That's why we've been leading these charts now for almost 6 years, and we're getting closer to having some action. So having that in the northern panhandle, or excuse me, right in along this northern West Virginia area, someplace between Morgantown and Parkersburg, and then north into that area, having more of this underground storage, you're not only going to have a facility with storage, but you're going to have downstream businesses will come. It's one of the driving forces for bringing the Shell plant up at Monongalia, Pennsylvania. They want to use it, and also the one TPP program over in Dilly's Bottom. They want to tap into it, and they just got a contract for methane supply. But if they could have it stored in the ground, it would be a no-brainer to have this facility here. So things are moving with it still. We've had some change in administration. We've had, in different positions, but we still got right now a reliable source. People want to have this storage hub. They want to have something that'll give us national security by having it stored here locally because of the downstream jobs that can be created from it. So I'm still very bullish about this.
Good, thank you, because we need that in Washington. And, it's another long-term project. It'll take years for this to happen. But we appreciate your efforts on staying, up to date on that and keeping us informed in case there's anything we can do from the state level.
Well, there's even more. This whole idea of diversification, you've heard me say that now several times on it. We're blessed in north central West Virginia. Having the high-tech park, that is a tremendous boost for us because not everyone wants to work in a coal mine, the timber industry, or the gas industry. So we've got to have this diversification of some the plastics and the petrochemical industry. So this is a real possibility for us to be able to do this. The I-68, I want to get that I-68 every time there's an infrastructure bill, we talk about how we can include the I-68 corridor in there to expand that across. Because when we were meeting with the people with PTT, that was one of the key things. They've got a north-south corridor that they can ship their products from it, but they don't have an east-west. So that was why we were particularly trying to get the I-68. We've had good conversations with Jim Justice about that. Also with Secretary Chow with the Department of Transportation. They understand more why we're trying to get this accomplished. So there's a lot of excitement right now for all of you in north central West Virginia. You're unlike the rest of the state. The idea of having Vermont, Marion, and Harrison County is just exploding with possibilities.
Just a quick question. You touched on that transportation, and one of the things that very locally here in Morgantown, the Morgantown Industrial Park is trying to get a new interchange or exit on I-79 very close to Westover for the purpose of developing and expanding the industrial park in Morgantown, which has rail, river, and somewhat lack of access to the interstate system. So that's the reason for that. Have you been involved in that at all and trying to see whether or not federal funding could be used for that?
We've been in contact with the Department of Transportation. We've been in touch with Jim Justice about this. And some of the people that would be affected with it. We had a great meeting I'm going to say less than 2 weeks ago down in Morgantown with people to build this interchange. And we came down to what the kind of numbers that were going to be necessary to do that. We passed that on, and now we're trying to figure out how we do this in an infrastructure package to get that thing accomplished. But the governor has to put this in his priorities for the Department of Transportation, because DOT is not going to put money into an area if it's not one of the priority programs for that county. For example, we pushed very hard to get those $20 million grant to come in to build the bridges in Mon, Marion, and Harrison County. That meant that the governor had to put that as his list of priorities, and then the DOT came in with their matching share with it. So we're working on that because we know that possibility, what that could open up with the Morgantown Industrial Park. We've had great conversations with, I don't need to be name dropping, but we've had a lot of conversations with people that in one of those meetings, we had one of those 333 meetings, we understand how important that is.
Good. Thank you. That's all that I have in questions, and maybe we can see whether or not we've had any submitted questions during the course of this conversation.
Well, but oddly enough, Dan, we haven't talked about energy, the carbon capture and things that the threat that we have to our fossil fuels, both in gas and in coal right now. That's kind of in my wheelhouse, is where we spend much of our time in energy and commerce. Dan, is the list I was hoping we were going to get to, and I was going to make it an opening remark was
David, I'm glad you go ahead and do that.
Well, I just want to make sure that we talk about some of these things, because down in this energy issue is, we've come to literally a fork in the road. There are people in Washington that want us to take the one course here, which is to ban fossil fuels. That's under the Green New Deal. We see that all the time. It's constantly being talked about. Even Biden has picked up on it. He wants some version of the Green New Deal to do away with fossil. I know that's a way to deal with carbon, getting rid of the carbon out of the atmosphere. That is a way. That's not the only way. Doing away with fossil fuels could devastate the economy of West Virginia and Eastern Ohio, and with all the numbers of states if we did away with it. I'm trying to move this other fork in the road, which is going into innovation. And I'm particularly pleased with the response we're getting from the federal government, and especially Nettle there in Morgantown, putting the money into research so that we can come up with a way to capture carbon. Simply doing away with and relying totally on renewables. We'll ultimately be there, but we're not there now. So if we put this deadline on at 2035 to have no more fossil fuel coal and natural gas, we're going to have a real problem meeting our base load that we have, and we're going to look more and more like California. So I'm hoping we stay on the course that we've been pushing, particularly on this legislation. We're working with Kurt Schroeder out of Oregon, that puts money into research, finding ways, because here's came down what it did, Dan. We had a hearing the other day in Washington, and I asked the one key question with it. Again, we know carbon and fossil fuels is the key issue. We understand that. So the question comes down, if we totally decarbonize in America, got rid of all the coal-fired power plants, all the gas-fired power plants, all the oil-fired power plants, all that, would we still have wildfires on the West Coast, droughts in the Midwest, and hurricanes? Because that's what everyone keeps saying. If you do away with that, you won't have any of those. And every one of the panelists said, of course you're going to still have that. There's still going to be a problem in America because it's a global issue. I can see Mike, he's moved here on a little bit. So we've got an issue here that we're going to have to address on this, and that is understanding the rest of the world is continuing to do this. So on energy, we've got to find a way that China and India can burn their coal and continue with gas in a way that's clean. Because even if we totally decarbonize, we're still going to have all the health problems across the country, because the rest of the world is still burning coal, and they're not backing off. China right now burns 5 billion with a B billion tons of coal. We do 750 million tons in the United States. India, over 1 billion tons of coal, and neither of those nations are burning it cleanly. So I think it's incumbent on us to use our laboratories, our research, our scientists to come up with a way to capture this carbon in an effective way, and then export that technology to these other nations so that we can clean the environment up. But just for us to do away with it, it's gonna crush the economy. And we're still gonna have forest fires on the West Coast, droughts in the Midwest, and hurricanes. So if we're gonna do this, we've got to do research. I trust science. I trust our people at Nettle and other laboratories across the world, across America, Palo Alto, over in I can go on with it. They're all working on ways that we can collect this, get this carbon captured in an effective way. We've got legislation we passed on this, but on like 45Q, that's worked. We've seen already the progress is being made. We have a company down in Texas called Net Power. There's now 0 emissions with a gas-fired power plant. We've got Petronova that's already made their major reductions with it. So we're already moving in this way. This is the time to choose a path of closure of our coal-fired power plants, our gas plants, because can you imagine what that would do to West Virginia's economy and families that lost jobs and lost hope?
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I got on my soapbox for a minute, but again, it's something that I spent a great deal of time in Washington trying to deal with. That it's frustrating to me that some people they just don't understand in rural America and in some areas the loss of fossil fuels could be devastating. Just like if you take it, go expand that, Dan, just for a minute. Even if you get into fracking, where people, it's not very popular to frack, but that's how you get the gas out of the ground. And I carried with me a lot is this little jar here. This is gas that's come out of the ground. This is ethane. This is the resin that we get from the ethane and the methane out of our ground. And from this bottle, we can then make plastic gowns, gloves, masks, face shields. We can make automobile parts. We can do all these kinds of things. But the only way that we're going to have a plastics industry that's successful to meet all the demands we have into the 21st century is by doing fracking and removing the gas out of the ground, harvesting that material. So we've got to stay on this thing. And for people to say we're going to ban fracking, well, we're going to fight you on that. But unfortunately, as we found out, Congress never passed a law that hurt coal. It was all by regulations. And that's what I fear right now is in a change administration, they're not going to be able to they may not be able to ban fracking, but they can do it by regulations. And that, again, would have a devastating effect for those of us that are trying to build a broader economy where we can use plastics and have pipelines and take care of this gas industry that's emerging throughout West Virginia with Marcellus and Utica. We've got to make sure we can maintain that. So I'd also, for someone, is to talk about what's happened down in Morgantown in Mon County. And if I could, Dan, just and Eldon, all of you, most of you know we work behind the scenes. We don't go for the headlines on this stuff. But I had a list that we had prepared just of some things that have happened. We've talked about the 333 meetings, but we talked about quietly. People said when we were having our meetings about Decker's Creek and the pollution in Decker's Creek. And we got the money quietly, worked with the groups to be able to take care of that. And you're seeing some improvement with it. The Upper Mon, people have asked when we were at a meeting, how do we protect the locks and dams? Because what the Corps of Engineers want to do was to do away with them. We got them keeping so that we can hold on to those things. We've had the PPP, the I-68, the airport. We got $8 million through the CARES Act. We were able to push that into it. We even had an incident early on in this. Quietly, we're not taking it. We'll talk to you now about it. But it was we had a church group out of Mon County that was stuck in Central America. We wound up, because of our relationship with Mike Pompeo and his wife Susan, we were able to contact them and find out how do we get them out because they were stuck. They couldn't get a flight out. All the flights were canceled because of the pandemic. But with a couple phone calls, the administration sent an airplane down, picked them up, and brought them back. So it's this stuff that quietly gets done that's going to help out in Mon County. So I'm really proud of some of our work of our staff, our people that both in Morgantown, our office there, as well as Washington, to make sure that Mon County gets its fair share and gets some action on things that need to be taken care of. From veterans issues that we've gone out of our way. And I'm so honored because those men and women have put themselves in harm's way and get caught up in bureaucracy. It's troubling for me that they get. So we've got one man that all he does on our staff is try to unlock the bureaucracy and help out people with our veterans. And he's collected over $5 million, $5 million that was owed to our veterans that he was able to secure for them. So I'm particularly pleased. Now I've been going on. Are there questions that you have that's been raised?
David, I want to thank you so much. I very much appreciate your comments there. We have no further questions in the chat box. I actually was going to ask you if there was that burning thing that we had not covered. You went ahead and covered that on the energy question, which was very good. I also was going to confess, and I'm going to give you a little bit more time to do that. Since you're so well known, I got to confess that I didn't give you the time to actually give us a little bit of your bio. And I feel a little bit like Jeopardy, because now I'm going to ask a question that you just gave the answer to, as to why the membership why the membership should support you in the fact that you were supporting the issues that they had recently adopted in the priorities, but I think you just went down that list. So that's why I say I'm giving you the question after you gave me the answer. So because I think you just went down that list of priorities that I sent you recently. But you are well known to us, but I do want to give you a few more minutes to give us a little bit of your bio. I confess that I didn't give you that opportunity at the beginning.
I'm unique in Washington. I'm only one of 2 licensed engineers in Congress. Now, not there's anything wrong. There are 242 attorneys. Now, not there's anything wrong with attorneys, but that's what we deal with when we're going to do with sewer and water lines, infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, all that, and broadband. Would you rather have an engineer talk about those issues that's done millions of dollars in those types of projects, or a lawyer from Texas? I have some fun with that, but I'm just saying that's a unique position I'm in by taking that science background as an engineering background. And there were some things I wanted, Eldon, that I want to add to it is from hearings and meetings we've had in Morgantown. I credit a lot of the success of what we've done because we listened to what you want. And as a result, we've been able to take that back. Things like STEM education. What we were hearing from our veterans when we had that student vets, they were having a hard time coming out of that. They were trained warriors. And now they come back and they want to use the GI Bill to go back to school. And they couldn't finish. It was too difficult to make that transition from being a warrior to being a student. So here, what we were trying to do, we passed a STEM bill. It's now signed into law that gives someone, a military veteran, that wants to go into STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. It gives them 5 years, not just 4. To be able to accomplish that. And that began with talking to student veterans in WVU. We also talking with the veterans in Mon County and in Fairmont County, in Marion County, in Fairmont, came up with about the idea of, and we come up with a 3-digit number, because when people with mental health issues that we have all across America, and it's also in West Virginia as well, when someone has some trauma, they're faced with concern, I don't want them to try to, right now, call 888-743-5692. They're not in the mental state. So what we did, we listened, and we took the message back, and now we've adopted a 3-digit number. They're about ready to come out with that and put that in the public, so the individual can hit that 3-digit number and not try to memorize a 10-digit number or longer before they can get help with it. So it's helped, this idea of having these meetings. It's also helped us because we've now developed, Eldon, we've been rated now by all these groups in Washington. We're the 10 out of 435, the 10th most bipartisan member of Congress. We get things done. People know that when we put our name on something, there's a chance it's going to get passed because it's got bipartisan support. And I just this morning printed off, here are 10 more bills that we've been asked by Democrats to sponsor with them because they trust us. They understand that our position on energy and commerce is going to be beneficial to them. It's the oldest committee in Washington. It is something that I fought for to get on. And I remember back 10 years ago when they asked me, he said, what committee do you want on? And I said, I'd like energy and commerce. And they just looked at me and they shook their head. And they said, we don't put freshmen on energy and commerce. It is one of the most important committees in Washington. We don't put freshmen on that committee. And I'll still remember the remark I made to him. I said, look at me. Do I look like a freshman to you? I've been to a couple county fairs. I came to Washington to get something done, and I know this is the committee that I can accomplish it with. And the next day, they put me on energy and commerce. We broke that barrier. That had never happened before, and that's something you have to respect in Washington, that typically freshmen don't get on those key committees. But I pushed my way on it as an engineer, one of the lone engineers, and coming from a coal state, an energy producing state, they listened to it. So we're on the key position on that. I want to continue with that. There's work still has to be done. We've got legislation that we're laid out to accomplish it. But working, we want to continue on listening to what people need and making sure that we're accessible and to take that message back to Washington, work with our staff to get something accomplished. Does that help?
Very much. We want to thank you very much. It's been quite a privilege to have you join us and answer our questions. We've worked very hard to get our membership issues out, and we thank you for putting yourself out there and addressing the public and business and community. And we want to thank you for your service. I would also like to thank our moderators, Dan and Libby, for their work and commitment to the partnership and to Monongalia County and the community. Finally, I'd like to recognize our board chair, Sarah Woodrum, to say a few words and to close our session.
Thanks, Eldon. I also want to thank Dan and Libby. I know you guys are taking a lot of time out of your day, and we really, really appreciate you doing that. It means a lot for MAP. I want to thank our speaker and our candidate. I really learned a lot today. I appreciated you addressing the COVID-19, which is kind of top of mind for everybody, but more than that, I appreciated hearing about the fact that you haven't lost sight of other big issues, such as the opioid crisis and broadband issues. And all we hear about lately is COVID, which it is a big deal. But I really appreciate the fact that you're still staying on top of all of those other issues. I think knowing that someone in your position is still keeping your eye on the ball and taking all of our issues into Washington and being our spokesperson is important for us. I think it's important that you recognize that Mon County and the northern part of the state is different. It is, for better or worse, but you seem to have your finger on the pulse, and it was great to hear all of that today. I personally really enjoyed your prop that you showed us from fracking. That was a nice addition for the presentation, and I appreciate that. But most of all, I wanted to thank you on behalf of Russ Rogerson and myself and the board of MAP, and appreciate you taking the time today.
No, thank you. It's an honor. It's an honor to be the voice for this area in the halls of Congress. I think of all the powerful people that have walked those halls, and to be amongst them is very humbling. But I love being your voice. I love walking in those halls and being able to represent this area, because we are unique, and I love it. So thank you for the chance to serve you, and I hope you give me another chance to continue on. Thank you. God bless all.
Have a great day.
I want to remind everybody that this meeting will be on Facebook and our website for the public to watch and learn about all our candidates. This concludes our session with Congressman McKinley. Thank you and have a great day.